new economic sanctions against Iran to put new pressure on the regime in Tehran. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wrote on Sunday, President Donald Trump and the overwhelming might of our military have significantly dismantled Iran's military capabilities and weakened its nuclear program. Now we are entering the endgame. At dawn begins an economic D-Day, the single greatest financial offensive ever marshaled against any adversary. The economic pressure comes as the Iranian rial crossed 2 million to $1 US, a historic low for the country's currency. The head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council responded on X, saying if the economic war continues, not a single drop of oil will be exported, neither through the Strait of Hormuz nor from anywhere in the Persian Gulf. Iran will regard any country's participation in or support for America's economic war against the Iranian people as an act of war. Despite this statement, reports do indicate that crossings through the Strait of Hormuz are up 400% over the last 2 weeks. The United States is overseeing vessels out of the Persian Gulf through a safer southern passage. This passage allows for millions of barrels of crude oil to be exported each day. Still, the Iranians remain defiant.
The fact that the United States has once again moved from military threats, saying that it will strike and so on, to reviving its old plans shows that they are truly desperate and have no solution when it comes to the great Iranian nation. Therefore, they keep bringing their old plans back onto the scene.
The U.S. naval blockade also remains in place as CENTCOM says 70 commercial vessels have been redirected since the blockade was reimposed. In terms of U.S. military movement, the USS Abraham Lincoln is headed home after being deployed for 274 days. This aircraft carrier made its last port call in December, breaking a Navy record. The vessel is being replaced by the Japan-based USS George Washington. On Friday, President Trump doubled down on his position that the strait is now U.S. territory.
They'll never have a nuclear weapon. They want to make a deal so badly. We don't even know if we want, because I view the Strait of Hormuz as an American territory right now. It's an American territory.
The question remains, will this new economic pressure lead to a deal or a return to combat? Guys?
Trey, we have had sanctions on Iran for decades, and we've been in a war with them now for months with increased sanctions. Iran's economy is teetering on the collapse as it is. How could these new sanctions actually be the death blow to the Iranian economy and ultimately, at the end of the day, force this regime out?
Look, there's a compounding factor here, and we don't know exactly what's going to be announced by the U.S. Treasury, but the rial number is really the most significant over the past 24 hours. It is at a historic low, more than 2 million rial to $1 US, and it's an indication that inflation inside of Iran is rapidly rising. Coupled with the U.S. naval blockade and additional sanctions, it puts new pressure on the regime in Tehran. And again, this question about who can make the decisions inside of Iran. President Trump on Friday talked about this as being one of the biggest problems of the United States, that even if new pressure is applied, they have to get to the individuals who can actually make an agreement and ensure that it's enforced.
Okay, Trey Yingst live for us. Thank you, Trey. We're going to bring in the U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. Matt, thanks for coming on. You know, obviously, as we just heard Trey say, we don't know what these sanctions are going to be that's going to be announced today. But my question is, why wasn't something like this done sooner?
Good morning, and it's good to be with you. Well, Ashley, the real reason is that obviously there is a escalation that you would go through. You don't maximize everything that you bring to a conflict like this. And so, you know, President Trump has obviously kept a clear goal of getting a deal done that guarantees forever that Iran does not possess nuclear weapons, and that's going to always be the number one goal. And so, you know, incrementally increasing the pressure on Iran and the regime, I think, will accomplish that. You know, we have militarily, you know, they've been decimated. They have no meaningful military that can defend or protect the Iranian people, and their navy is on the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz. And so, you know, these sanctions, I think, that are going to be announced today, I'm not going to get ahead of Secretary Bessent, but I think these sanctions are going to be dramatic. I think they're going to be meaningful, but, you know, I want to highlight their currency is as weak as it's ever been, and inflation is skyrocketing. And those two things, combined with this naval blockade that's being successfully executed, together with us opening a lane in the Strait of Hormuz to move oil in and out and ships back in to get more oil. I mean, some days, I think this is important, Ashley, some days we are moving more oil now than we did pre-conflict because of the pipelines that have been opened up and all that's happening in the Middle East. And so this is obviously, we are entering an end phase, but, Scott Bessent's announcement today is critical and important.
Yeah, and he's putting other nations on notice, warning those who continue to financially back Tehran, stating the following: the alternative for those who tether themselves to Tehran is the foreclosure of any path to lasting prosperity, and any nation that serves as a financial artery of a withering regime should expect to share in its isolation. Basically saying, look, we're going after Iran, but if you side with Iran, we're going to go after you too, and that's going to be horrible for your future. Which countries is Scott Bessent really threatening there, Ambassador?
Well, there are several countries that still continue to trade with Iran, and it's no secret, and it's been publicly talked about, that China still buys oil from Iran, especially when it was able to get out of the strait. Countries like India also accept shadow fleet oil from other countries, including Iran. So I think there's, this is a clear indication that the conflict is with Iran. That we do not seek conflict. To expand this conflict, we want everybody to join the United States in the denuclearization of Iran, because this is an important project. Can you imagine, as crazy as they have been since this conflict began, if they possessed a nuclear weapon, how threatening that would be, not only to the region, but as they developed even more sophisticated missile technologies, how that could threaten here in Europe and even the continental United States. And that is not acceptable. President Trump has said that is not acceptable, and he's taken action. Many presidents have dithered on this issue. President Trump has taken decisive action.
Yeah, and as we heard Trey say, I mean, one of the main issues, if not, it's a huge issue with dealing with Iran, is who is making these decisions and who's agreeing on this, because we'll say one thing and then we'll hear them say something completely different. So obviously that is something that is high on the radar for the administration. But do you think that they can actually come to some sort of agreement? I mean, if not all this pressure is put on them, but do you think there can be an agreement made with them?
I think there is always a chance for a deal to be made. We continue to be open to that possibility, but this is absolutely an issue, is knowing exactly who you're making a deal with and can they follow through. And the bluster that we're hearing from the Iranians is from desperation. They are obviously not strong. They're not in a strong position. It is time for them to come to the table, enter into the deal, no nuclear weapon, become a peaceful state that is part of the world community, and that is always open to them. But we do not have any tolerance for a nuclear ambitious Iran, and President Trump